Important thing that Mr. Rangarajan just mentioned about, that if we have indeed to attain 8% growth, knowledge economy has to be properly distributed and dispersed. Today, information is power. But the problem is, a very limited few are saturated with information, and the majority are starved of information. And for me, as the Minister for Information and Broadcasting, this statement is very important, that we need to create a situation by conveying information so that people can develop and urge for development. That is indeed the second most important message which I can see eloquently coming about from this book, Planning the Next Decade and Beyond. What is third? Governance. I think if democracy is there, politics would be there. But if governance gets a back seat, perhaps the pace of development would become indeed frustrating. How we take this challenge on? I think this can be taken on only if we feel that governance would have to become politics neutral. That is indeed very important. And if we read between the lines of his analysis, we find quite some of those suggestions which completely answer to some of the queries which I have raised. Lastly, we cannot have lopsided development. Coming from the state of Bihar, I feel very strongly, which I see, amidst good pace of development, there are islands of geography for whom development is of no consequence. How we take into account these circumstances, how we respond to those challenges, and can the government only do it? State government or central government or PSUs? Or we need to involve the non-governmental initiative in a very big way. There also Panji, for the first time, has very eloquently stated that if development has to occupy the center of our discourse and agenda, non-governmental initiative will have to equally be given pride of place. It is indeed four broad contours that I see this book as indeed opening a very powerful discourse on the platform of development, which shall benefit the common people, we who are in public life, and those who are the policymakers. Thanks a lot. I wish him good luck.
Thank you, Ravi Shankar Prasad ji.
Ajit Singh ji, Ravi Shankar Prasad ji, Shri Raj Kapila and Dr. Uma Kapila, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to add my word of welcome to the people on the dais, who are my friends, my colleagues, and also extend a very warm and hearty welcome to all of you. I am touched by the fact that I see before me so many faces of friends who have taken time off on a weekday to come to this function. I am beginning to suspect that they have come in sympathy. They are aware of my predicament. I am supposed to be giving a speech on my own speeches, and for that I need their moral support. I am very thankful to Dr. Rangarajan, Ajit and Ravi Shankar ji for their very kind words, generous words. Dr. Rangarajan has brought out so lucidly, in just a few short sentences, in a few minutes, the essential features of this publication and its thrust. The problem is that if I say anything more about the publication, publishers are going to be angry with me because then you won't read them. So I must refrain from touching on the contents of the publication as such. These speeches cover the period after 1999. They are in the public domain. You will find them in the Planning Commission website. What the publishers have done is to select some of the speeches and to arrange them thematically, so as to make it easier to access whatever is of interest to the reader. They have put in a lot of effort, and I would like to compliment them on the end result, both in terms of the get-up, in terms of the printing, and in terms of the way that they have brought this whole publication out. But the important point is that so many speeches on so many subjects cannot possibly be made without the help and contribution of a very large number of people. And I would like to acknowledge the contribution of all these people for their inputs, their analysis, their ideas, their knowledge and experience. And there are so many people from the Planning Commission here, members, ministers, state, others, and all of them in the Planning Commission have helped. I have drawn deeply on their knowledge and experience. And I think I should, if I don't embarrass him, appreciate in particular the contribution of Dr. Pranav Sen. For me, these years in the Planning Commission have been a learning experience, because the Planning Commission is a treasure house of information and data about all aspects of India's development, the hopes and aspirations of the founding fathers, their vision of the future, the strategies and plans, and then going from plan to plan, an evaluation of the successes and failures. And the real utility of this exercise is the ability to learn from the failures. And I do believe that to the extent that the Planning Commission is frank in its assessments, is unbiased in its presentations, and is constructive in its approach, it can make a very valuable contribution. As has been pointed out earlier, I did not come to the Planning Commission without a background of several decades in public life, in Parliament, in several ministries. Although Dr. Rangarajan says I am a combination of a politician and a scholar, I have passed off as a scholar among politicians and as a politician among scholars. My problem has been to pass off as a politician among politicians and as a scholar among scholars. But the point I found was that in spite of this background and my familiarity with development problems over a long stretch of time, my experience of the Finance Commission. And we have here the present chairman and two ex-chairmen, myself and Dr. Kusko. My experience in the Finance Commission and later on in the Planning Commission, it gave me an overview of the working of the central ministries as a whole. As Ajit Singh ji was saying, in each ministry, you are confined to your own ministry. You have to do a lot of firefighting. You have your constituency, your parliament, and so on and so forth. In the Planning Commission, you can, if you like, take the opportunity to sit back and to see where the interconnections lie, how far compartmentalization is coming in the way of integrated functioning. You get a chance to see to what extent there is overlapping. You get some idea of the battle of turfs. I think these are important insights. And in the Finance Commission, later in the Planning Commission, one gets a hands-on exposure to the Indian federal experiment. What is the financial relationship between the center and the states? How does it work in practice? The Constitution divides the powers, divides the resources, deliberately provides for slightly better better is perhaps the word, taxation powers to the center, and within the framework of the Constitution, provides not a purely federal but a quasi-federal structure with a slight inclination towards strengthening unity. Now, following partition, this was what the founding fathers thought was best for the country. And I believe even now, this has proven to be the right balance. But the political scenario changes, different political parties come to power, there are coalitions, and there is need to adjust all the time. And unless there is sufficient flexibility in dealing with center-state relations, then problems very seriously can arise. And it is this understanding of both the strength and the potential fragility of center-state relations, which I think is perhaps the most important lesson that I have learned in the course of my experience of the Finance Commission and the Planning Commission. Above all, I have benefited enormously from being a part of the process of the preparation of the 10th plan. The whole process, starting with a dialogue with experts and various stakeholders, on to working groups, subgroups, steering committees, and so on, right up to the Planning Commission, the Cabinet, and the NDC. Now, this is a democratic exercise, the like of which no country has. I can say that authoritatively. I can't think of any other country going through this process and taking months upon months to reach this conclusion. Therefore, behind the 10th plan is the approval of all segments, not necessarily full approval, certainly a consensus of support, center, state, different sections of society, and different stakeholders, as well as experts. And that is what makes this document valuable. And as has been pointed out, many of these speeches either relate to the 10th plan or the planning process and deal with various aspects of the economic situation in the country, the strategy of development, etc., all in the context of the 10th plan. A range of issues have been discussed, as you have just seen, and a wealth of data is available. But that must necessarily be so because the country is a complex country. Because this country has people living in different centuries. And any plan must take into account the interests of all sections. And while taking into account the interests of all sections, must not lose sight of the need to move forward, to modernize, to keep pace with the fast changing world. I mean, this is the essence of the challenge. If you ignore the people who are at the bottom of the ladder, you are not going to have either an equitable structure or, if I may say so, a sustainable structure. If you lose sight of where you have to go with the vanguard, information technology, biotechnology and the rest, then also you are going to lose the opportunity you have of lifting up this country. Therefore, the essence of devising a strategy and drawing up a roadmap for this complex and varied country is an enormous challenge. And the 10th plan has tried to the best of its ability to respond to this challenge. I only hope that this publication will lead to a better understanding of our development strategy by the layman. Because experts, of course, would write far more learnedly on these issues. That I cannot do, but I hope the layman would understand it better. And I also hope that it would help in strengthening the consensus of which I spoke. Because I believe that a consensus will be needed for the implementation of the plan. Preparation of a plan is one step, the next comes implementation. To give you just one example of power. Now today the power sector has run into serious problems. The T&D losses are high. State electricity boards are running at huge losses. Private sector investment is not coming in. Generation capacity has been added to a much lower extent than provided for in the 8th and 9th plans. This is the scenario you have. Therefore, unless you rescue the state electricity boards, unless you cut down the T&D losses, unless user charges are recovered, and you put the SEBs back on their feet, you cannot really put the power sector on its feet. Therefore, many schemes have been started. Now these include incentivization of the states. I mention this to you because one can have a very good plan, but you have to have cooperation of the states. To the extent that today resources are a constraint, you have to even provide the resources, but then it becomes necessary to say, all right, we will provide the resources, provided you take these steps so that both the states and that particular sector can benefit. Now this is the kind of thing which is needed in those sectors which are of vital importance and which have run into trouble. Somebody has to pull them out. Nobody is coming to do it. So we have to devise ways and means to do so. And I mention this particularly in the context of the need to take some hard decisions. We talk of fiscal correction and so on. Ultimately, hard decisions have to be taken. and hard decisions of a kind which will lead to sustainable development and growth. Now, one of the problems which I have seen is that every year we have elections. We have elections to parliament, we have elections to state assemblies, we have elections to panchayats. And having been a politician for so many years, I understand that somebody is going to fight an election next year. At an assembly it may be possible, but it is not possible for parliament for its own reasons. But I am only posing the question to you because I see it in practice. I see the best of intentions not being carried out because of this understandable political compulsion. So then we again come back to this problem. Next year we will start discussing it. No solutions are forthcoming. As of now, we have taken 2 steps for the implementation of the health plan. One is to have 4 empowered subcommittees, and the other to have a priority agenda of action for 2003-2004. I mention this to you because the implementation phase must follow quickly the formulation of the plan. If there is a lag between the two, then it is difficult to implement it. And among these 4 subcommittees, you would be interested in this. One is for removing interstate barriers in trade. This will be chaired by the Prime Minister. Another is governance reforms, which will be chaired by the Deputy Prime Minister. Third is creating an investor-friendly climate. Ministry of Commerce and Industry, empowerment of PRIs, the Ministry for Rural Development. Now, why a subcommittee on governance? There are so many tools on governance. There is an institute which is dealing with governance matters. Governance is something which each of us understands and knows. Then why a separate subcommittee just now? Of the NDC? I have found that there is really no dearth of plans and projects. Also that where implementation is good, resources are also forthcoming. So the problem is not in plans and projects, the problem is in implementation. And implementation means good governance, directly linked to governance. And therefore ultimately the bottom line is good governance. And today we find, as has been mentioned by Dr. Rangarajan, that where governance is bad, states are going backward, or at least not progressing or stagnating, whatever you like. And regional disparities are growing. And therefore governance assumes a different dimension altogether. And so we have to see that we really get to grips with this problem. I know the difficulties. I know there are various problems. It's not an easy solution. Again, it's not just for the center. It's really the state and the center. And now perhaps we have to go down to the 3rd level. But we cannot escape coming to grips with the problem of governance. Similarly, there is the other aspect, and that is, again, that was hinted at, and that is the participation of the people, maximum participation of the people. And that is where the PRIs, the subcommittee on PRIs comes in, that is Panchayati Raj institutions. Because today we have a number of NGOs, we have good PRIs, and amongst all the difficulties we face, amongst all the problems that we face, there are always some silver linings. In the PRIs, in some cases, in many cases, dry capital, later on going into trade and even industry. Thousands have come up in the whole country. We have produced a compendium of success stories from different parts of the country. Planning Commission has produced it. And there you can see how much is being done by the people at their level. And this is one of the brightest features of the present scene in the country. Developmental scene, if you look at, many things are happening. But this I would count as among the brightest. So I would like to end by suggesting that we recognize the strengths and weaknesses of this country. It has its strengths, it has its weaknesses, but it is on the move. It is going forward, and with all its diversity, with all the problems, internal and some which are being thrust on us from outside, with all these problems, it is maintaining its democratic polity. It is facing the challenge of change in a peaceful manner. It is not giving in to the temptation of using the gun to suppress dissent. These are important things. We take it for granted. But when an election is over and another party comes to power, in India now nobody bothers. I mean, the new party just takes over. That is as it should be. But it is a measure of democratic discipline that we take for granted. I am very, very happy to see that the basic reason for optimism as we look to the future is not so much the government or the Planning Commission. It is the resilience of the people of this country. And it is their enterprise, it is their character, it is their ability to withstand great privations, but yet retain their faith. I think these are the elements which have kept this country going for centuries, and these are the elements on which we rely for its future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. My distinguished colleagues in the cabinet, distinguished dignitaries, distinguished friends and invitees. Let me first very warmly congratulate Shri K.C. Pant for the extremely valuable contribution that has been made to our development literature. These days, as you all know, we are busy in Parliament. I had a bill about Jallianwala Bagh in the morning. I could not go through the book which was sent to me this morning, but I have been able to glance through some of the pages while sitting in the Parliament. It covers almost all aspects of Indian planning and development process. And as has been, as you have all been told, and you are already aware, that there is not a ministry of which he has not been in charge, from mines and steels to defense and finance and all sorts of portfolio he has held, and therefore he is the most eminent person to hold charge of the Planning Commission, because that surveys the entire Indian planning scene. And I think he has produced an excellent book for students, for all the young administrators, and of course the politicians who have the inclination to read. And very many things about it has been said. I would touch one aspect. I saw one just sitting here, I just glanced through it. Like effectiveness in Indian administration, that is one of the effectiveness in administration, that is one of the write-up in this book. While it occurred to me that some time back I had delivered Shri Govind Ballabh Pant Memorial Lecture. While preparing for the lecture, I glanced through his speeches which Pantji had given, his illustrious father. And in one of his speeches he said that we have a very good administrative system that we have inherited, but apart from the administration there is something like a soul of an administration. There is a structure of an administration, of a governance machinery, there is a soul of a governance. And I personally feel that during the last 50 years, what we have forgotten is the soul of the Indian administration. What we have kept in view is the structure of administration. We have so many reform commissions, so many reform committees. They have dealt with the structure of the administration, but they have ignored the soul aspect of the Indian administration. That is why we find ourselves. And I will give you one brief illustration of what we mean by the soul of Indian administration. I have sometimes narrated this story, which is a true story, and which I think brings out the best part of this thesis. You all know, I find large number of, Sri Ajit Singh Ji is also himself here, large number of officers from the Uttar Pradesh, erstwhile Uttar Pradesh United. Govind Panji has been the illustrious chief minister of that state, and there was a very illustrious civil servant, Shri Bhagwan Sahib. He was the chief commissioner here in Delhi when I joined service. He became very fond of me, and he treated me like his son. He became, of course, the governor of various states and so on, and retired, and then settled in, that is South Extension Part 2. By that time I had the good luck to become the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi, that is somewhere around 80. And one day he rang me up, Jagmohan, can you come for a few minutes? I said, yes, certainly I'll come. He seemed to be in some sort of agony. I went there. He said, look, these are the bills I have received from DESU. I can't understand what they are all about. They have been pestering me for quite some time. Would you look into them? I looked into them, I said, why do you bother? I'll tackle them. Then he started taking a cup of tea, we sat together. And then he said, Jagmohan, it is not for this purpose that I had called you really. There was something boiling in my mind I wanted to share. And there, after you get retired, nobody is there to share certain thoughts also. So he said, look, Jagmohan, I have been the chief secretary of a very big state, Uttar Pradesh. I became the lieutenant governor of Himachal Pradesh, ambassador in Nepal, governor in Kerala, governor in Jammu and Kashmir. But the damn Indian administration I understood only after I have retired. Meaning thereby, the soul of Indian administration he came in contact after he had retired. Because he went to the post office, nobody would look at him. When he went to give the bill, they will just find little fault and send it back. He knew everything about the structure of the Indian administration. He was the most experienced civil servant which the country had produced, most outstanding civil servant. But something was missing in our setup, and that is the culture of administration. The view which we take, and I think when Panji mentioned about the positive aspect of Indian governance machinery, the negative aspects of our output, I think it is the negative aspect is due to this aspect that we have ignored the culture of governance in this country. The culture of negativity. We are always fond of finding faults and see how the things should not be done, instead of adopting a positive attitude. And there is another story which I don't want to take more time, but I am tempted to tell you that also. And that is also from my own personal experience. And you know, in Delhi you are all aware of the master plan and all the development that took place. I was very enthusiastic as a young man, want to do everything. Then many people got annoyed with me. They used to complain to my boss, the Lieutenant Governor, and the Lieutenant Governor would listen to them because he knew that what I was doing was correct. Then he went to the Home Minister. In those days, the Home Minister never interfered. And he was not listened to. But then some few very powerful people in the political setup went to him, and he asked me to come along. And he said, show me what you are doing. These people are always complaining and they say this and this. So we sat in a car in those days. The ring road just had not been built. All was dusty, very sunny. I took and enthusiastically he put me in the car in the front. The two gentlemen sat with him in the back. And I went on enthusiastically defending my position. I had all the maps and everything, this will happen, that thing will be done. All those areas which you see now in Shantiniketan and other areas, that universities and so on. So I was trying in everything. Look, Germany said, when I was a young student, I was very weak in mathematics. And the teacher used to give me a proposition. And the proposition was that there is a tank and it has some sort of a hole at the top and a hole in the bottom. From the hole in the top, somebody is putting water in it. Its diameter is so much, water is coming into that tank, and somebody is also a hole underneath. Its diameter is so much, and the water is flowing out. Calculate when the tank will be full. He said, what a foolish minister, this teacher is. He is asking me to calculate when the tank will be full. Well, he should close the hole down below and I will just calculate that it should be full. You know, this I can calculate. He said, at that time I thought the teacher was very foolish. Now I find the teacher, after I joined the Indian governance machinery, I find that this is the only solution which he wants to find. Because there are in India some people who are putting water in the tank and some are taking it out. And nobody knows when the tank will be full. Because this is the aspect of it that some of us are working very hard to take the country forward, but some are equally determined to take the water out of the country. So therefore we are quite, I am at least not very clear whether that I am equally weak in mathematics of this kind, and I can't find out whether our tank would ever be full or not. And in 21st century, what is going to happen? Well, some good statistician may be able to tell. I am at least not able to tell. In fact, India has a very great potential for coming up to the top. We have done very well, as has been brought out some of the write-ups here. We have performed very well in many, many fields.